What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Modern Mortgage Show, where I interview mortgage professionals who share their stories and modern information about the industry. I'm your host, Rocco, and I'm excited to introduce my final guest of the day. His name is Scott DiGregorio, and he's a loan officer at Primary Residential Mortgage out of Fort Myers, Florida. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, Rocco. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you being here. So, Scott, why don't we start off the show just giving us a brief introduction of who you are and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been in the business for about 25 years now. I have a branch with 4 people that work with me. I've been my former boss, now partner. He and I have been together for 20 years now, so haven't bounced around a lot. Went through the trials and tribulations. Fort Myers, Florida was literally ground zero of the collapse in 2008. So went through that, was not fun, but mostly purchase-based. I have a fair amount of consumer direct leads. I have a whole Facebook video thing that I do. And I do a lot of speaking and training for realtors. And those are the 2 ways I've run my business.
Awesome. So you said you've been in the industry 20 years now?
25.
25 years now.
Yeah.
And did you do any type of work before you got into the industry?
I got into the business as a kid. I stopped going to college. I moved here from New York. The college didn't have the classes I need. I took a job selling copy machines for Toshiba. One day, a guy chased me out of a place and said, "I'm opening up a mortgage company. I want you." And he eventually talked me into it, and I've never looked back. But I was, I think, 19, 20 years old when I got into the business. So
it seems like everyone has a really interesting story of the way they got into the industry. What made you really want to, okay, so you took it when you were 19 or 20. What made you really think, okay, this is where I want to stay?
I didn't at the time. At the beginning of it, I just thought it paid a lot better than copy machines. I closed, I was a little home improvement loan, a little second mortgage, and I got a check. I don't remember the dollar figure, but I remember being a whole lot more than I made selling a copier. And it just seemed doable. And then as I got into the business, I started to realize what makes the industry special. I mean, the ability to permanently impact somebody's life positively is a very special thing. And unlimited potential and all of that. But, I focus a lot on really understanding the overall financial picture, almost like a financial advisor. I'm not one, I'm not licensed as one, but, I really talk through a lot of economic stuff with people, helping them set up their 401ks and just emergency funds, all that stuff. And I've seen over the 20 something years, I've just seen the impact I've made in people's lives when I come back in contact with them 5, 10, 15 years later. And it's just pretty cool to me.
So expanding on impact and stuff like that, what would you say is the most satisfying or rewarding thing about your job as a loan officer?
I think just educating people about money. I did a loan recently for somebody, refinance for somebody that I helped her purchase something. I think it was in the late 90s. And, when I met back with her, she's older than me, she's 20 years older than me, but I met back, she's like, "Hey, Scott, remember you taught me to do this? I did it and look where I am. And remember you taught me to do this? I did it, look where I am." And those types of stories, I think getting a mortgage, I think a lot of people are what I call drive-through lenders. You want your payment $1,800 a month, you qualify for this much money, good luck.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're missing out on the opportunity to really touch their clients' lives in the greatest way. I think taking the time to help them understand debt structure and savings and retirement, just basic monetary stuff that the average American just doesn't know because it's not taught.
Mm-hmm.
That's a permanent impact on them, maybe their children. It's a generational impact potentially, and nothing feels better to me than that.
Absolutely. When you truly impact someone's life with your product or your service, it just feels amazing when it's a positive impact on their life. So moving on, we're in a very strange time right now. As of right now, so what are you seeing in the industry at the moment, and what do you see happening in the future?
So, as we're talking, I'm sure some people will be listening to this at later dates, but as we're talking right now, we're going through the middle of this coronavirus disaster. And I'm seeing the mortgage industry go through an impact significantly greater than what we went through in 2008. from a widespread standpoint, as well as a velocity standpoint. I was talking with somebody at my company, and they said what took 4 years to happen in '08 happened in 22 days in March of 2020. So I see that changing. I see that as a challenge. I see the government's economic stimulus packages, although there's a lot of good with them, I'm certainly not knocking them. I don't think they understand the impact they're having. For example, they were overbuying mortgage-backed security bonds. It was creating tremendous margin calls and liquidity issues on banks. Lots of non-QM and other lenders went out of business as a result of that. This week, they've calmed that down. The next hurdle we're facing is this nationwide forbearance thing. And I don't think the Treasury Secretary and some of the members of the Federal Reserve understand the issues that come as a result of that. If somebody doesn't make their first payment, their mortgage isn't saleable. Like, who the heck is going to make a loan to somebody in that situation? So although I certainly agree that people need help, and I certainly agree that we should be helping them, I also think we have to do it in such a way that allows the banking and mortgage industries to maintain their liquidity and keep operating, because housing is 40% of the country's GDP, and we have to keep it going.
Absolutely. It's definitely a little bit misleading. And you seem, just speaking with you just for the past 5 minutes, you're very knowledgeable about the industry. Let's shift gears here for a second and talk about some of your struggles. So starting out just as a young 19 or 20-year-old, what would you say were your biggest struggles or obstacles that you had faced early on in your journey?
I've brought a few new people in and trained them. I just have a passion for doing that. And I see them having the same struggles I had, which was my youth. It's difficult to sit down with somebody that's double or triple your age and give them financial advice. It's tough for them to take you seriously. Yeah. And, when I'm training people now, my younger loan officers and assistants and stuff, I really get them dialed up on knowledge over the overall economy. I'm a huge MBS Highway fan. I'm a huge Barry Habib fan. I think we need to consume when you're young. That's a huge challenge. Not to mention, this is for any loan officer, asking a real estate agent to trust their next paycheck to you when you're new it's a difficult thing to get people to do. So those are early on. Those are my biggest struggles. Now, keep in mind, the 90s were a very different world than we live in today. I mean, we're talking pre-internet. Yeah. So, it was just a different planet back then. But the youth is still a struggle because I have guys now working for me that deal with it.
Yeah. So would you say it was more of an issue back when you were, just starting out, or even, 19 or 20-year-olds starting out, it's just as big of a issue or struggle?
I think it's a little bit less of a struggle today, just because it's easier to acquire that knowledge. The fact that I could hire somebody who's brand new, I could put them in front of MBS Highway, I could have them watch 25 of Barry's videos, and in a week I could have them understanding the mortgage-backed security bond market. When I was doing the business, the MBS market wasn't even available to people. You couldn't subscribe to it. So technology, I think, has made things a lot easier. Furthermore, from an advertising standpoint nowadays, you could do all sorts of amazing targeted ad on social media, and you could target people your age. I mean, if I have a guy working for me now, he's 24, and he does tons of Instagram stuff going after his peers that are looking to buy their first house, or maybe they're a couple of years older than him. So that the ability to just massively target is a huge plus nowadays.
That's a really cool niche and way to brand yourself. So a young guy helping young people. So let's say you were talking to yourself, your younger self 25 years ago, or someone just starting out. What advice would you give to yourself back in the day?
Yeah. So going back, if I could do it all over again, I would get knowledgeable faster. And I also spent a lot of years not doing a good enough job of staying in touch with my past client database. I was a lot more transactional and less relational. I I went a lot of years and had zero communication with my clients post-closing. And I see a lot of people do that now. So that's the second thing. The third thing I would say is this. People need to systemize their business. What would happen with me is my business would grow. I would exceed my capacity and my business would dip. And I'd fix the problem and I'd grow and I dip and I grow and I dip and I grow. I think, the people I train now, I tell them, build your business as if you're closing 20 loans a month, even if you're closing one. And put those systems and structures in place and those automations, get your CRM dialed in, all of that stuff. I did, and I see a lot of people doing it as the problems come from it, as opposed to doing it reactively instead of proactively.
Absolutely.
Those would be the three main things.
Yeah, so definitely setting your business up from the start to be able to scale rather than just, doing it and then when it comes time to scale, then fixing the problems. It's best to set it up so when you scale, it's set up and you have those standard operating procedures. So in recent years, technology, like we were talking about, has really made its way to the industry. How has this, impacted you and affected you in your business?
I think it's been tremendously positive. I mean, I would need easily one or two other staff members to do what I do if it wasn't for technology. So I think technology enables you to provide a very consistent experience for people. And I think without technology, without automations and some of those things, I think it's impossible. Now, we got to make sure that we're not using technology to replace us. It needs to supplement the loan officer and the human piece of it. But it's made it easier. The other thing that it's enabled me to do, social media has enabled me to grow an audience that would have just cost a fortune, using traditional mediums. I have a lot of presence on social media. I have tens of thousands of people watching me, watching my videos. I'm putting out 15 to 20 videos a week. All of that enables people to trust you and develop a relationship with you from afar. And that's what people want nowadays in many cases.
100%. You definitely can be seen as an authority a lot easier nowadays. And going back to your point, I definitely see how technology makes things easier. It makes it, faster with automations, but there's always going to be that human touch to it. But that's just what makes it great. It just makes it easier. But you can still add that human touch. So are there so you said video, are there any other modern strategies you're using to scale production, even maintain better relationships with your past clients, or just systemize and organize your business?
Yeah, there are some technologies that I'm using nowadays. There's services such as HomeBot and services such as House Happy. There's some technologies like that really could create a pretty amazing experience for people post-closing, enable me to stay in touch with them in a very different way. I'm a huge fan of BombBomb. I send out a monthly BombBomb video to all of my clients with a financial tip. I send out a weekly BombBomb video to well over 1,000 agents with a marketing or business tip for them. So that's the other thing that I utilize very, very heavily is video. All my social media stuff is video. I'm not a very good writer, and I've done a ton of public speaking in my life, so I'm more comfortable in front of a camera. So that's the other main way that I'm leveraging it.
Yeah. So you said the videos, and yeah, definitely keeping touch with your past clients is crucial. The average loan can result in 4 to 5 more transactions. So if you're not keeping touch with your database and your past clients, then somebody else will be acquiring them.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. The other thing that I do is, I have a custom friends list on Facebook with my past clients in it. And I spend time every day just interacting with their posts, which is, I call that the modern day newsletter. And, again, things like that, are only possible today. And it's a pretty powerful tool.
Absolutely. So where do you see all of this going in the future in terms of technology, social media, in the mortgage industry specifically?
I think more and more automation is going to be a thing. I think more and more Zoom meetings as opposed to in-person meetings are going to be a thing. I I see all of that going on. Short term here, the next handful of years, I see the country going through a pretty rough economic time. And, I've positioned myself as a financial advisor type in the marketplace with my videos and everything else. And I'm expecting to do well during those times. So I'm expecting more uneasiness. I'm expecting people to be buying smaller houses, maybe not maxing out how much they qualify for. What I don't know is this. I don't think any of us do. What is what is normal after we get past this pandemic? And I don't know the answer to that question. I think that greater efficiencies will come from this. I know in my case, half my staff is working remotely and it's working perfectly well. Does that cut down on commercial office space moving forward? Does that impact the commercial market and rents and all of those things could come into play? And I don't know, but I think the world is realizing how much easier working with mobility is than people thought.
Very interesting. That's definitely stuff to think about. And touching on or moving into the buyer side now, you touched on the buyers. So let's go to the buyer side. So what do you see as the biggest misconception or fear that your clients have before working with you?
I think confusion is the biggest fear. It's an interesting question for loan officers to ask their clients nowadays, and realtors too. How long have you been kind of sniffing around? And when I started asking that question probably close to 2 years ago now. And the average answer I hear is about 3 years. So think about if you spent 3 years researching mortgages and house buying on the internet, how much information would you have? And I think most people now inherently realize a percentage of the information they acquired isn't accurate. Mm-hmm. But the people that come to me, they know that, they just don't know which pieces are inaccurate. And there's, these online payment calculators and things that are out there, they're terrible. And they, at least in my neck of the woods, they grossly underestimate taxes and insurance. And, people just don't understand. So I find people being overwhelmed. I speak to a lot of people that are, fixing their own credit when in actuality, they're actually making it worse. So that's what I see. I see a lot of that. A lot of people are overwhelmed and just scared because it's such a big, complicated beast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where it really comes down to finding the right loan officer that can advise you and educate you and just hold your hand basically throughout the process to make them feel comfortable. And you seem like you're very knowledgeable just from speaking with you. And what would you say? Do you work with a lot of first-time buyers?
Yeah, I do.
What is the number one most asked question you get from first-time buyers?
It has to do with financial surprises. Are you sure my payment's not going to go up? Are you sure my cash to close isn't going to go up? Are you sure my interest rates are not going to go up? Things of that nature. Just, again, fear of the unknown, I think, is what, look, most people, if you start doing research online, most people are going to find a horror story or 100 of them. Mm-hmm. So depending on which horror stories they read, that's what they're afraid of, is that horror story happening to them. A lot of people are concerned about, hey, last minute, is the loan going to get denied? Which, as we sit here in this coronavirus world, that's happening every day across the nation. So, that those types of things are the main things that I see. What I find is most of the stuff I'm educating my clients about, they didn't even know to research. Fluctuations in taxes and insurance and flood insurance and every state has its own thing, but here in Florida, we have Save Our Homes Act, we have homestead exemptions, and we have utility assessments and all these other variables that can come into play. And when I start talking to people about that, they're a little taken aback about this whole segment that they didn't realize, which is great. It makes them sticky to you, so to speak. It's tough for a client to leave you after you have that kind of a conversation with them.
So it seems that, like you said, they have fear of the unknown and they just want to feel confident and comfortable in the process, like they've got everything under control.
Yeah, definitely the case.
Awesome. Well, Scott, I really want to thank you so much for coming on today. I want to thank you for your time. I had an amazing time speaking with you and just an honor to meet you.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. And thank you to all the viewers for tuning in, and we'll see you again for the next episode.